Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have actor and comedian Michael Ian Black with us today. We'll chat with Michael in just a moment. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and/or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please follow or subscribe and rate and review, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So, Michael Ian Black is an actor, writer, and comedian who began his career with the legendary sketch comedy troupe, The State. He then went on to co-create several television shows, including Viva Variety, Stella, and Michael and Michael Have Issues. His other TV credits include Ed, Another Period, The Jim Gaffigan Show, and the Wet Hot American Summer franchise. His film credits include This Is 40, Sextuplets, The Baxter, and Linoleum. Michael's written several screenplays, including Wedding Daze, which he directed, and Run, Fat Boy, Run. He's also authored many books, including My Custom Van and 50 Mind-Blowing Essays That Will Blow Your Mind All Over Your Face, You're Not Doing It Right, and his most recent, A Better Man, a mostly serious letter to my son. He is also the author of several award-winning books for children, including A Pig Parade is a Terrible Idea, Chicken Cheeks, and the I'm series, and his satirical book, A Child's First Book of Trump. Additionally, he's hosted game shows including Trust Me, I'm a Game Show Host, and Duck Quacks Don't Echo on NatGeo. He's co-created and hosted the How to Be Amazing, Topics, and Mike and Tom Eat Snacks podcasts, and currently hosts the Obscure podcast. He's currently a team captain on CNN's Have I Got News for You? And he's a stand-up comedian who has released several albums and specials and regularly tours the United States.
Check, check.
You hear me?
Yep, you sound very handsome.
I've never been told that before.
I didn't mean it, but I said it.
Look, at my age, I take whatever I can get from whoever. What would handsome sound like? I'm just curious.
I have no idea. I imagine like Barry White. That's a handsome voice.
There you go. That was a voice. Michael, welcome to the back room.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
So I want to start off a little bit with some background. Nice Jewish boy from New Jersey. I say that as a Jew myself, so all the Jews out there, relax. I can talk about Jews. So growing up in Jersey, Jewish, religious family?
No, very secular upbringing. We did a tiny bit of Jewish shit during the year, but very little, for reasons that are probably beyond the scope of this podcast. But I've always considered myself Jewish in every ethnic sense of the word.
Sounds like your family and mine were equally religious. The difference with my father, he would do that as he was eating bacon.
Well, we ate bacon. We did the whole thing. I mean, we were secular Jews. In later years, my mother sort of turned more towards the religion, but that's just because her lover was a Jew, and it was sort of like, she became kind of a super Jew briefly. But then I think she got bored of it.
Mm. And as a kid, were you funny? Were you like class clownish, making everybody laugh all the time?
I definitely was not the class clown. I would say a majority of my classmates did not particularly find me funny, just as a majority of the American population does not find me funny. And by the way, I include myself among them. I don't find me particularly
self-loathing comedian.
Well, let's start with, you've already identified the Jewish part. Now we just chat on.
And so they didn't find you funny because A, you weren't funny, or B, your humor was like above them, like it was witty. It was
sure,
sharp.
Let's go with that. Let's go with my humor being above them.
No, I mean, like, let's say you're 12. If you had a seriously advanced sense of humor,
Well, so this is a pretty good example of my sense of humor in high school, and probably to this day. My best friend and I, when we were in high school, one day after school, made, I don't know, maybe 24 signs to put up in our high school announcing the formation of a new club. And the club was called the Cheez-Its and Apple Jacks Club. So what's important about that is it presupposed that there was a Cheez-Its Club and an Apple Jacks Club, and that somehow these two clubs were warring or beefing, and we were going to bring these groups together to create the Cheez-Its and Apple Jacks Club. We made about 24 of these signs, and we put them up with the meeting time and where it was going to be and everything else. And then that was it. And that was my sense of humor. And you can tell by the fact that you're not laughing, that you had the same reaction as my high school classmates.
Well, I think this is why Kamala Harris lost, because the Democratic Party failed to recognize the Cheez-Its / Applejack community.
That's right.
The message was not targeted to them at all. So that's where my mind was. I was thinking of politics while you were talking.
Well, yeah, I completely agree with you. Had they recognized the commonality of these two groups, rather than using it as a wedge issue between the Cheez-Its group and the Apple Jacks group, we could be in a very different place in this country right now.
Sure. Anyone else in your family funny? Like mom, dad, sisters, brothers, Uncle Harry, anybody? Like, did you get your humor from anyone?
My mom had a good sense of humor. My mom did have a good sense of humor. Like, I don't know. Like, comedy was never something that I never thought I would pursue that as a career. I don't know. I didn't know anybody in comedy. I didn't really know comedy. I didn't know actors. I didn't know show business. I didn't know anything. But I had it in my head that I was going to be an actor. And so I went to school for that and then fell into comedy when I was at college.
So that was like the first moments where you started to really look inward and say, hey, this is something I not only agree. No,
not at all. I just thought it would be fun to be in a comedy club. I wasn't thinking like I found my calling at all. I still don't know. I don't think of myself.
Did you have an idea of what your calling was at that time?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be like, like a not successful regional theater actor. That was my call.
As opposed to the highly successful ones.
Well, so there are successful regional theater actors.
Is there a pecking order with that, with the dinner theater?
I didn't say dinner theater. How dare you? How dare you? I said regional theater, which is a step above. I just assumed I was going to be poor. I assumed I was going to be a sort of vagabond. And I was cool with that. I was like, okay, great. I'll just be a poor actor. And I was fine with that.
So let's stick with dinner theater for a second, because I've always been fascinated with that. Is that like the lowest rung?
Yes. Well, I was going to say community theater's lower, but I actually don't think it is. I actually think dinner theater is lower than community theater for two reasons. One, in community theater, you're not expecting to be paid. So there's a sort of amateurism to it that is endearing and fun. And it's not necessarily, the people in that aren't thinking it's going to lead anywhere. And the second reason why community theater may be above dinner theater is because at community theater, nobody's eating schnitzel while you're performing.
But I just thought of
which, by the way, if you want to use that as a measuring stick, stand-up comedians by far the lowest of all, because people are always eating and drinking while you're performing, doing stand-up.
I just thought of what the lowest rung actually might be. Medieval times.
Oh, medieval times. Well, but that's a different thing too.
That's like rock bottom. Like that's like
no,
when you're ready for.
No, rock bottom is Renaissance fair. When you go to medieval times, that's a step up from Renaissance fair.
True.
Now you're indoors. You're being provided a horse potentially. There's
a coat of armor.
There's probably health insurance for some of those people. You're not getting any of that at Renaissance fair.
Yeah.
He goes D&D player, Renaissance fair, medieval times. And medieval times I actually think is the highest you can get in that world, other than Lord of the Rings extra.
So medieval times would kind of be like porn before you get a legit acting gig. Like Tracy Lords.
I'm thinking about that. No, because again, like I don't think the medieval times dudes are thinking they want to be actors. I'm thinking they want to be jousters, and they are. Like, that's the major leagues. If your goal is to get on a horse and get a lance and joust, like medieval times is pretty much, that's the only place you're going to get to do that.
While someone's eating bad prime rib. Like
Yep.
bar mitzvah level prime rib. Wow. All right. Well, that was an eye opener.
Well, this is all one man's opinion, you know.
Yeah.
I don't mean to insult anybody doing any of those things.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for anybody who gets on any stage and pretends to be somebody other than they're not, because I dabbled in stand up and that was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. And I have props for performers because, you know, especially comedians, because you're up there alone, but just anybody who's doing this, because it's not only terrifying, but you're making people happy. Hopefully. I don't know about the medieval times things or dinner theater. That might, you know, people might just be eating and like, all right, whatever.
I don't know. I went to Dolly Parton's version of medieval times. She's got one in Pigeon Forge. She's got a theater where they do like reenactments of the Civil War, oddly enough, but it's all on horseback. And I walked out of there in a great mood. Terrific. I don't need to see stand-up comedy to exit the theater in a great mood. I ate chicken with my hands. I watched people on horseback. I saw a video of Dolly Parton. That's a great night.
And so what is a Dolly Parton medieval times? Or is it just because her name is attached to it?
Her name is attached to it, and rather than it being set in the medieval times, it's set during the Civil War. And so there's people on horseback reenacting battles and such. And then the rest of us are eating chicken with our hands.
That sounds horrible.
I thought it was going to be horrible. It was great.
All right. There's an audience for everything. So when did you get the showbiz bug?
Well, I made the decision to be an actor when I was 9. I was in a play in summer camp, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. But I don't know that it's always a good idea to listen to your 9-year-old self for career advice.
Well, I became an astronaut, so I don't know, but I can't speak to that. I'm actually an astronaut.
Yeah. I mean, like 2 weeks before I was going to be an actor, I was going to be a long-haul truck driver. So why did I then devote the next 4 decades of my life to pursuing this nonsense? I don't know, but I did, and now I'm very famous.
And who were your comedy inspirations coming up?
Well, so if I thought about comedy when I was growing up, the people who, I mean, I did pay attention to some comedy. I paid attention to Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby and George Carlin and early SNL, Robin Williams, Lily Tomlin, Joan Rivers. I read Fox when I could listen to it. Buddy Hackett was always very funny. But a lot of that was dirty, and so I wasn't really exposed to it.
So let's talk about Have I Got News for You. I love this show. I think it is one of the greatest concepts for television in the last many years. I don't know why it wasn't done before.
Well, it was. It's been on in the UK for 35 years.
I mean, here.
They've tried to sell it here. And in fact, I was part of one of those attempts several years ago. A fact which had escaped my memory until I went in to audition for this rendition of it, and they reminded me that I had done it. And I still don't really remember that I had done that, but I feel confident that they're telling me the truth.
It is a great show because it's the intersection of politics and comedy in a way that hasn't been presented to us before in like a game show setting, but it just seems like nothing is off base. You have comedians, you have politicians. Jasmine Crockett was great. It's what good comedy is supposed to do. It's supposed to call attention to stuff that terrifies us, makes us aware. Comedians have been doing it for decades. It's like just calling attention to stuff, but it makes it accessible. And that's what I think the show does, is just makes all this insanity that we're experiencing right now so accessible.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons it's working is because we're able to talk about the news on a news network in a way that nobody else on that network is allowed to and or capable of speaking about the news. Like we had a Republican congressman on named Mike Lawler from New York's 17th congressional district.
Mm-hmm.
And I just called him a liar to his face because he was lying. You know, he was lying. And you're not going to, and you know, Jake Tapper doesn't have that freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And through no fault of his. I mean, you know, he's got journalistic standards that he has to adhere to, and he's not allowed to inject his personal opinion into it. I am, and I do. And if you're just talking bullshit to me, I'm going to say, dude, that's bullshit. Everything you're saying right now is bullshit. And we're able to do it in a way that I think is truthful and hopefully funny and hopefully reflects sort of what the people watching are thinking and feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think our strength is that we're essentially like Roy, who's our host, and Amber, who's the other co-captain, and myself, like we're not journalists. We're observers of everything that's going on. And we all have the same kind of what the fuck reaction that I think much of the nation is experiencing. So I think it's cathartic for people to see that reflected back at them.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing about journalists, people on CNN, MSNBC, one of the reasons that I think they stay in that lane, they want people to come back. You know, if they push too hard, they won't come back. Do you run the risk, like, let's just use Lawler as an example. If people start to feel like, oh, I'm going to go on this show and my bullshit is, I'm going to get pushback for it, I may not go on the show. Do you run the risk of that?
Of course. But our job isn't to be a platform for people to come on and spew bullshit.
Right.
So if you want to come on and something strikes us as phony or false, like somebody's going to say something. But I don't think it's accurate or fair to say that Republicans can't get a fair shot on our show. Mm-hmm. We've had a number of them. And like Representative Tim Burchett from North Carolina was on. And we pushed back, I feel like, on this or that, which I think is appropriate and fine, but he wasn't lying to us, you know? And so, you know, he gets my respect for that. And if you're able, if you can defend your position, show up. We'll have a good time with you. We'll talk to you. We'll be respectful of you. We'll make fun of you, but you're also more than welcome to make fun of us. We want that, you know? If you want to call me, you know, a libtard pinky commie, fine, have at it. I'm more than happy to take that abuse from you, as long as you're being principled, as long as you're telling the truth. You know, if you have a point of view about something, express it. We want you to. We just don't want to be lied to.
Yeah, and I would imagine that philosophy holds true for Democrats too. Like, it shouldn't be like Republicans are going to come on the show and it's expected that they're going to lie and Democrats are going to be angels all the time. Like, it seems to me that the attitude is, come on the show, speak the truth, have fun. But if you don't, it doesn't matter whether you wear an elephant or a donkey on your lapel, you may be called out on it. And I think probably a guy like Lawler, look, these guys know when they're spinning. They know when they're spewing bullshit. So I would imagine Lawler goes on this program. He knows he's going to be called out on some level at some point. Sure, he watches the show.
I would hope, and more than that, I would hope you would welcome it as a politician. Mm-hmm. I would think you would welcome the chance to explain your position more fully. Mm-hmm. But when your position rests on sort of semantic shading, I'm sorry, you're going to get called out on that. And that was exactly Lawler's position. Lawler's position when he came on the show, and he's been very vocal about this, is I'm not going to cut any benefits to Medicaid. And so I said, great, because this was the week that first Republican spending bill was coming down the pike for the House to pass. I said, so when there's even $1 in cuts to Medicaid, you're going to vote. And then I just pointed at him, waiting for him to say, I'm going to vote no. But he couldn't do that because he knew that budget was going to propose spending cuts, benefit cuts to Medicaid, even though the bill never says that. It doesn't say that, but the way the bill is constructed is it has to.
Of course.
definitionally, it has to cut benefits from Medicaid. So he was trying to like dance around that. And I just said it was bullshit. And it was bullshit.
Yeah. Well, if you do the
I did
math,
ask Tim Burkett what kind of amenities the concentration camps for immigrants were going to have. And I believe that was edited out of the show.
yeah,
I don't think they like to
are they getting
see
HBO? Can they stream? Yeah, I mean those are important questions. So editing that segues into my next question. When you watch the show at home, it's fast.
I do not watch it. Oh, when you watch the show at home.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't really mean you. I actually meant
when one watches the show.
When one watches the show, it's fast paced. The barbs are flying quickly. 2 questions. How much leeway do you have to just blurt stuff out? Because it seems like people can just blurt out a joke whenever they want, which is great. Second part, is that highly edited?
Because we have so much leeway, because we can just expectorate whatever comes into our stupid little brains, there is a necessity for editing and a lot of it. The show's not scripted. So, I mean, Roy has jokes, pre-scripted jokes that come in and out of video.
Right.
But, you know, most of the show is not scripted. And we are encouraged to say whatever we want, whenever we want. There's some sort of craft things that come into play there. You don't want to step on other people. You want to let Roy joke out, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But basically, just say whatever you want, whenever you want. And because of that, yeah, there's going to be a necessity for a lot of editing because a lot of what comes out of our mouths is garbage. So the running time for each episode is like 41 or 42 minutes, something like that. And we shoot usually for around 2 hours, 2 hours 15. So when you consider, I mean, actually not that much gets cut when you consider like, you know, if you were shooting a TV show or something, like a scripted drama, you might shoot all day to get a few minutes of footage. So yeah, we keep a remarkable amount considering like how much comes out of our mouth. And it's now that I say it, I'm proud of us that we edit so little.
Gosh,
good for us.
You should be. I loved when you mocked the Musk's Sieg Heil. Like that made it in, and some people freak out when they see shit like that. And that gets back to what I was saying before about comedians calling out really bad stuff and calling people's attention to it through humor. So like something like that made it through. Like what is off limits?
There's nothing that's off limits in the sense that, oh, you can't make a joke about that or you can't make a joke about that. It's mostly like, was that joke funny or was that joke not funny? If it's funny, it stays in.
Right.
Like, yeah, I definitely did multiple, let's call them Musk salutes on this show to call attention to the fact that this is bizarre and it's a Nazi salute. So,
well, I mean, now that he said that Hitler didn't murder millions of people, I think we can fairly assume it was a clear Nazi salute.
Of course it was. And the fact that the media is too afraid to say that to me is, I was going to say criminal. It's not criminal, but it's upsetting. It's upsetting that they're not that so much of the media is incapable of just saying what a thing is. A lie is a lie. A racist statement is a racist statement. A Nazi salute is a Nazi salute. And it's important. It's important to say these things. It's important to call. I know there's debates about this, but from every definition that I've read of this word, we are living in a fascist regime. That doesn't mean it's going to lead to mass murder. Fascism doesn't necessarily lead to mass murder. But according to every definition I've read, we are living currently, right now, in a fascist regime. I did not say that the last time he was in office because it was not apt. It is now apt. And it's important to acknowledge that. You want to call it authoritarian? Okay, fine. But the truth is, this is fascism in its most classic form, the marriage of corporatism with federalism. And then there's other elements of it as well. But the media is afraid to say it because it's such a charged word, which it is. But in this moment, it's important to use the words that most accurately describe
but the media is also now terrified to say what it is.
Terrified.
I mean, 4 days ago, he gave a rambling rant at the Department of Justice, and he said what the media is doing is, quote, illegal. I mean, it's terrifying. If you're in the media right now, what do you do? And that's why shows like yours are so important.
Yeah. And to CNN's credit, and by the way, like, they deserve a ton of credit for this. Mark Thompson, who's the head of CNN, he came over from, I don't know where he was immediately before this, but he came over from the BBC, where he did oversee the British version of Have I Got News for You. He may have even been there at the creation of it. I don't know. But very early on, Mark said to our producers who related to us that he wanted the spirit of the show to be such that every week you should be afraid you're going to get fired, which I think is great. You know what I mean? It's creating a permission structure for us to go as far out on a limb as we want to go. And that's how you get Nazi salutes on our show. You know, that's why the language is what the language is on our show. You know, it's fairly coarse language at times, which you're not going to hear anywhere else on CNN, but you will hear on our show, and you'll hear on Bill Maher's show, which precedes us. And the whole reason that our show exists is because they started licensing Real Time with Bill Maher from HBO, running it on Saturday nights in what was essentially a dead slot. That show started getting good numbers for them, and so they saw an opportunity, and our show is a result of that.
And what are the audience demos?
I have no idea who's watching. I probably could have that information, but I don't want it. I just want to be able to do what we do, you know, and not worry about who might be watching and who's not watching.
Right. You wrote a children's book. It's called A Child's First Book of Trump. I want to read something from it. The beastie is called an American Trump. Its skin is bright orange. Its figure is plump. Its fur so complex you might get enveloped. Its hands, though, are sadly underdeveloped. You're like the Bob Dylan of Trump nursery rhymes. That's it's awesome. Timothy Chalamet should play you in a movie.
Great. I know I'm not going to get hired to play me.
What made you write that book?
Well, I wrote that book in 2015 when Trump was running for the nomination. I started writing it when it became likely that he was going to get the nomination. I am a author of children's books, so this wasn't like a total departure for me, although the specific form of it and everything was very different than anything I'd written before. And, you know, I just sort of thought it was a funny idea. I certainly didn't think when I was writing it that he was going to be president, although I knew that was a possibility. Mm-hmm. I was convinced he wasn't going to win the first time, like most of the country. And I was wrong, as I am about most things.
He's very bad for democracy, but is Trump great for comedians and political game shows?
No, because for the same reason he's bad for everything else.
What are you concerned most about right now with him?
I'll go back to a question I asked Al Franken right after he won the first time. And I was doing a podcast called How to Be Amazing. It was a long-form interview show. Al Franken was the guest. And I asked him, because even then, during the first administration, in the early days of the first administration, it was clear that Trump's ideas about how government should function are radically different than the traditional American ideas of how government should function. And I asked Al Franken, will democracy survive? And Al Franken said, I might be getting the quote a little bit wrong, but basically he said, I think it's a jump ball. So he was saying in the first Trump administration, before any of this shit had happened, he thought it was 50-50. I think if I asked him that question again, the numbers wouldn't be quite so optimistic. That's my concern. My concern isn't about any specific policy, although I think the vast majority of them are abhorrent. My concern is the wholesale destruction of the American experiment and the enthusiastic endorsement of that destruction by a sizable minority of this country. Mm-hmm. So my concern isn't any one thing. My concern is, at the end of this, we may no longer have a recognizable United States of America.
Yeah. And not only is the electorate seemingly for this, but a Republican Congress is...
The Democratic Congress have abdicated.
Yeah. The only difference I would say is Republicans seem to be okay with it. Democrats just don't seem to know how to fight it, as we saw last week.
Right. Which to me is culpability. If you don't have the tools and skills to arrest the development of this most alarming of prospects, then you're incompetent, because that's what you're there for. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that you're collaborating. And I don't think it's unreasonable to think that some in the Democratic Party are either witting or unwitting collaborators in this project.
So do you think Schumer fucked up, him and the other 9 or 10 senators?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've given this some thought, and I'm not a deep political thinker. I'm not a deep thinker about anything, but it seems to me if the argument is it's going to be worse if we pass this bill because it's going to allow Trump and Musk to shut down more governmental functions. I guess all I can say is they're already doing that.
Exactly.
That's what they're doing.
Yes.
So what you by agreeing to by agreeing to this continuing resolution bill, you're basically saying, yeah, keep going, buddy. Keep at it. Mm-hmm. If the choices are both bad, then choose the bad option that at least draws a line in the sand and at least conveys your principles and ideals. Because then you have at least you have a place to fight from, you can retreat like the British at Dunkirk and you're stuck on this little spit of land and there's no good option. So you're just going to try to rescue as many people as you can to regroup for the fight. There is absolutely no reason for the Democrats to help Trump in the dismantling of the Constitution and the nation. If they're going to do it, let them do it, but they're going to do it on their own. They're not going to do it with your help. And what is he and he didn't even get anything for it. There was no negotiation. Mm-hmm. There was no compromise. They got nothing for it. So what the fuck are you doing other than potentially appeasing Wall Street?
Well, a lot of people say that he didn't want the label "shut down Schumer" or "Schumer shut down."
Yeah. Well, then resign, dude.
Yeah. Well, he's facing a lot of pushback now, a lot of calls for him to be primaried. I'm all for it. I mean, I was watching TV yesterday morning. Representative James Clyburn was on, and he was like, well, we got a great new plan that we're going to implement tomorrow. And I'm like, where the fuck have you been for 2 months? Like, and he was like proud of it. Like, people are going to love it. I think if the Democrats can't find a unified strategy to fight the fascism that we've been talking about, then what use are they at all? I mean, I don't get it. And this one, popularity numbers came out. People hate the Democratic Party right now.
They should.
This is before the shutdown thing.
Yeah, they should hate them because at this point they're proving their own uselessness. Hakeem Jeffries can stand up there all day and say, "Well, we don't have the numbers," and blah 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 blah. Okay, Mitch McConnell didn't have the numbers for a fair amount of his time in the Senate. He was the minority leader for years in the Senate. Mitch McConnell was somehow able to obstruct every piece of legislation he did not want to move forward. Mm-hmm. So why can't Schumer do that? Is he just not as capable a legislator? Is he just not as tough? Is he not as heartless? I don't know. I don't know what
he's not living in the moment. He's operating as if it was 2005. To me, the key question Democrats need to answer for themselves is the democracy burning down or not? Because if you truly believe, as Chris Murphy does, that we have maybe 5 or 6 months left, it's just like if 3 dudes came in your house with guns and machetes. Would you sit there and go, well, let's see what happens if they actually start to hurt us. Then maybe we'll call the police or we'll fight back. Like, it'll be instant, like you would feel that existential threat immediately and you would do whatever humanly possible to protect yourself and your family. Democrats don't seem capable of doing that. Part of them is like they're giving a message of, it's going to be okay. It'll settle down. The other part is like, no, we got to fight. And then there's everybody in the middle. And if you really believe democracy is hanging on by a thread, then everything you do should stem from that belief,
Right. You've identified the cognitive dissonance that I think is exactly right and is exactly what's turning off so many Democratic voters. If during the campaign, as you correctly said, people are saying, this is going to be fascism, this is fascism, this is fascism, and then the day after the inauguration, you turn around and you go, well, I think we can work with them. Well, then either your definition of fascism is way off base, or you were lying to the electorate about what the stakes were. Either way, that's bad. Like the reason, for example, like Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski got so much pushback when they went to Mar-a-Lago was because people are going, wait a minute, you spent the last X number of months telling these people are fascists and now you're going to the fascist house to kiss the ring? Which is it? Which is it? Where is your integrity? Or do you actually believe that it's fascism and therefore you're just covering your own ass because you're scared now? Whatever it is, you've lost all credibility with me. And I would say that about a lot of the Democratic politicians. There have been some bright lights. Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Chris Murphy, like you said.
Bernie is like, they've dusted off Bernie. Great. So relevant.
Pritzker in Illinois has been great. Like there's people who are sort of understanding and meeting the moment, and the vast majority are not. I don't know whether it's because of politesse and they're just trying to sort of go along to get along. I don't know if they're just following James Carville's stupid advice to roll over and play dead. Like, I don't know what they're doing.
Well, all the above, probably.
But if, as you said, you've got these intruders coming to your house, well then, I don't care if you don't have a gun. Pick up a can of Ready Whip and start smashing things.
Yeah, it's mind-numbing, but we're going to see how that plays out. My last question is really not a question, it's more of an observation. You write books for kids, you write books for adults, you write screenplays, you act, you direct, you're a comedian, you're on a political game show, you have a podcast. You really need to stop being such a slacker.
Well,
why don't you just find something to do, man?
It encompasses like a full career, like in this moment, I'm not doing all those things.
Yeah, but you're in the orbit.
I kind of am.
Yeah.
But you'd be amazed at how much free time I have. I mean, I got time to chit chat with you.
Hey, people are knocking this door down. D, E, and F list celebrities are clamoring to get on this pod. Come on.
All right. Well, then you aim tag. You got a C-list.
I had Danny Bonaducci on this podcast. Come on.
Oh, I stand corrected, and I apologize.
Thank you. Michael, I could talk to you for hours. This was a lot of fun. Please come back and do it again soon with me.
Yeah, anytime. Right. Like I said, I do have a lot of free time.
Take care.
You too. Thanks so much.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.